Spoilers for Beyond the Gates, Tuesday, September 23, 2025. The tension, pushed upward by fragments that seem trivial, has woven into a throbbing surface where every breath of Jacob, Derek, Ashley, Martin, Samantha, Smitty, Joey, and Marcel is bound by covert calculations, resentments that swallow reason, and a sense of betrayal that turns each of them into a cold judge of the rest of their lives. Jacob begins everything with his inherent discipline, not a noisy outburst, but the stacking of quiet pieces. He looks at schedules, checks the gaps Derek says are treatment hours, compares them with traces of daily routines to spot contradictions hidden in a polite mist. Health and recovery are not straight lines. They are jagged graphs reflecting the truth that facing weakness is harder than leaping through fire. Yet Jacob is not seeking Derek's collapse. He seeks the impact point of power in a relationship already warped by layers of concealment. Each time he uncovers another detail, he doesn't gloat. He aches, because truth in hand doesn't necessarily save anyone if it becomes a blade slicing trust to ribbons. Even so, logic pulls him forward. Logs, fingerprints, digital handwriting on lifeless devices. When timestamps, entry records, and a chain of unlikely coincidences align like a palm line, Jacob understands the secret is no longer a genteel blur. It is an anchor sinking to the seabed, and the one gripping it no longer steers the boat. He steps over the boundary of silence not to shame but to tilt the balance back to the true axis, where the keeper of a secret can no longer decide another's feelings with declarations cloaked in kindness. Meanwhile, Derek is trapped inside the shields he built to avoid being hurt. He knows precisely why he hides things, knows that compassion bartered for control is not love. But he also fears that if he releases the handrail he will slip. Quiet checkups, discreet trips, vague fees tucked into procedural files he files under necessary, become a chain of links letting him exhale for one day while dreading the morning someone will ask. The real complexity is that he doesn't know how to stand when someone insists on the full picture. His anger doesn't flare like fire but coils like a red coal, smoldering, heating the thought that if dragged into the light, he will lose the right to orchestrate the story in the way he believes is best for everyone. Each glance at Ashley reveals a fracture. The sense that he is pulling her onto a stage without lamps where she must guess which way is out. He tells himself he needs only a little more time, one more notch of progress, that Jacob won't quite assemble all the pieces. But the truth about only is that it always demands another only, a chain that grinds down trust before anyone can name the crack. Ashley stands between two opposing gravities. She wants to believe in good, to grant Derek the right to be vulnerable, and to believe Jacob's suspicions are the product of a mind too sensitive to traces. Yet a chill down her spine returns each time a tiny detail fails to fit. She drags herself back to a simple reality. In a relationship, privacy is a right. When privacy becomes a mechanism to manage emotions, it is no longer a blanket but a tether. She reviews the times she was placed in a posture of empathy without data, last-minute cancellations, reassurances polished to the point of sounding memorized. The new reality arrives without explosion, through a long silence and the decision that before the heart forgives, the mind will impose distance, enough for her to see her own face in the mirror without fog. The betrayal tilts not toward any single incident, but toward being forced to carry a secret that isn't hers, to shoulder a role she never agreed to play. She does not choose punishment. She chooses to stop cooperating with a game that has no clear rules and that freezes everything around her by 1 degree, yet returns to her the right to draw a new line. At the same time Martin charges into another front with the simple belief that what is right must be protected by the proper method. Samantha doesn't need an heroic pageant. She needs a procedural shield that moves her out of a reactive posture. Martin chooses the road of filings, paperwork, and orderly administrative steps, because he knows an impulsive decision can relieve in the moment yet leave scars that sprawl. He understands bureaucratic walls can be slow and exhausting, but he believes a strong legal base prevents the larger disaster waiting at the end of the slope. That conviction does not spare him another problem. being seen as too rational in a world that craves quick fixes. When forms are submitted, calendars set, receipts and confirmations threaded together, Martin breathes more evenly. But he has not accounted for the wave of feeling rising in the opposite direction inside Smitty. Smitty does not fear process as such. He fears the price of exposure. He does not want to be dragged into the light unprepared. He does not want numbers and appointments to become knives turning back on the very people he hopes to protect by other means. He is angry not because Martin is wrong, but because Martin is right in a way that risks revealing their hand. The feeling of being cut out is like a tiny scratch that bleeds forever, making any initiative from Martin look like subtraction from Smitty's role in the fragile structure. He thinks he's keeping steady for everyone. He turns to quick options, quiet blocks, silent counters. He believes better suit a life cycle of uncertainty. The disagreement needs no raised voice. It shows up in each man halting half a step as they pass, in nods that don't meet the eyes, and in Samantha suddenly walking a narrow bridge between opposite banks. Smitty's irritation is the mood of someone erased from the map. Left unvented by a trustworthy channel, it threatens to become a solitary move with consequences neither he nor Martin wants. Samantha, at the center of the shield, feels layers of pressure settle on her shoulders even while the paperwork suggests control. She is grateful to Martin for building a legal room to breathe, yet she understands Smitty's fear that steps taken too openly may trigger a feral response. She must allocate trust, weigh long-term safety against short-term relief, accept that sometimes no option satisfies everyone. She reminds herself a shield is not a weapon, that drawing lines the proper way is not a dare to the world, but the sensation of standing between magnets pulls the energy out of her bones. She opts for purposeful silence, not as surrender but as conservation. Saving strength for the road of documents, proof, confirmations, and sleepless nights replaying whether today's choice pushes her nearer tomorrow's edge. On another edge of the map, Joey and Marcel quietly lay the first stones of a plan only they fully comprehend. They do not posture as head-on antagonists. They simply use the tremor in the ground to erect a structure that absorbs and amplifies chaos. They time it for when the other arcs are consumed by private aches, when those who seem to control the big picture are distracted by personal details, and open a hidden door. Their plan needs no ornamentation. It requires a series of broken signals, a few normalized intersections, and a first outcome ambiguous enough that those affected can't locate the source. Their cunning lies in triggering a reaction without signing the trigger, so those standing on fragile material, Jacob, Derek, Ashley, Martin, Samantha, Smitty, feel the wind shift without knowing its origin. When a deadline jumps forward by half a day, when a confirmation drifts late by a few hours, when a number suddenly gleams in someone's eye at the precise moment it should, they know the plan has moved to phase 2. No one hears a lock click, but everyone senses the frame vibrating faintly, a signal that coincidence is actually somebody's pen stroke. Jacob holds the secret not as a trophy but as a debt. He understands exposure can correct the course but also shove the other person off the last ledge. He picks the path that makes him more uncomfortable than triumphant. He resolves to return truth to its proper scope, refusing to let it dissolve into poison spreading beyond what it touches. That choice brings its own quiet penalty, the loneliness of carrying something that is both evidence and burden, and of watching Ashley change by a calm algorithm painful to witness. He knows, to be fair, that the one who must decide the relationship's future is not him but the person forced to stand in the dark too long. Meanwhile, Derek, pinned by a truth that won't stand still, must choose between controlled confession and snatching back a sliver of authorship over a story slipping from his hands. He loathes the thought of becoming a poor version of himself, loathes having used weakness to barter closeness, loathes the tremor of mornings where he must reperform a reassurance script. He wants to smash doubt with a decisive gesture, but deep in his chest he knows that gesture is a scarecrow hung on the door, not a door opening onto light. Ashley embraces the new reality not with grand declarations but by recalibrating the most basic parameters of living. She rearranges time, trims emotional supports built on unverified information, returns to herself the right not to know when the other is not ready to tell. She sees a paradox clearly. To save compassion, you sometimes need a frame. To protect gentleness, you sometimes lock the door. She can't see the long road, but she can see the short one of a normalized day where she no longer patches excuses over holes. That decision makes her seem cold to those who love healing by hugging, but she understands true healing rises from the flat surface of truth, not a quilt sewn from assumptions. After days out of sync, Martin and Smitty enter a dangerous vacuum where each could act alone. Martin clings to the rails of procedure because once you set wheels on that track, only moving forward prevents derailment. Smitty, stung by premature exposure, is tempted to slip into a shadowed corner and pull one link in his own way, knowing that cutting the wrong link at the wrong moment could snap the chain. Samantha must resist the instinct to reconcile everything in a day. She knows vast ravines aren't bridged by a few embraces and promises. She continues with the neat breathing of someone who needs a finish line more than a series of victories at each bend. When Joey and Marcel sense sufficient static in the general picture, they push to the flicker point. A side effect reveals itself at the frame's edge, enough for someone outside suspicion to feel change without tracing its source. They don't need flourish. They need to ensure the conduits steer existing conflicts into a peak at the proper time. If Jacob steps half a beat faster, if Derek chooses the wrong small display, if Ashley's gaze lingers a second too long, if Martin adds one more document, if Smitty removes one mesh, if Samantha picks a different hour for an appointment, everything will align to the benefit of the dark. No one sees the hands placing the pieces, but all will hear the soft tick of a piece meeting the board. When the day closes, each person sits before a private mirror. Jacob faces the look of a man who keeps a secret not to win but to preserve fragile order. Derek sees himself between two roads, one of confession with loss, one of delay with corrosion. Ashley finds the straight line of her spine by treating distance as a tool rather than a weapon. Martin keeps the pen's rhythm on the file page, accepting the cost of slow but steady. Smitty steadies his pulse to keep anger from turning into destructive thrust, channeling it into a tempered watchfulness. Samantha rations energy, sealing tiny leaks so there is breath for the long stretch. Joey and Marcel test the final stitches, making sure the thread's tail is hidden, ready for rope swing effects to operate unaided. None of this makes a bang. It creates an even tension like a drumhead before the strike. Hard decisions need no performance. They need timing and alignment with personal motive. Betrayal requires no red-handed scene. It appears as the deprivation of consent. Anger needs no curses. It lives in the moment one stops believing what one once wanted to believe. Conflict begs no crowd. It is born when each person must guard the self against a storm trying to dissolve them into someone else's story. And as the curtain falls, no one can swear what Joey and Marcel's hidden plan targets specifically, but all must admit they have successfully planted a mirror in the corner so that everyone, passing by, sees their own shadowed side and reacts by instinct. That reaction, often fiercer than any scheme, is what drives the tale to a ledge where even a small next step might shake the entire structure they have tried to erect out of reason, pride, and the fear of being left behind. Thank you for taking the time to watch my video. All the content I make is just speculation and personal sharing. If you find the video interesting and useful, please support me with a like and leave a comment. If you have better ideas or more interesting speculations, please share them in the comments section for everyone to discuss. I appreciate all your contributions and support. Sincerely, thank you.